What if the headline you've been waiting for isn't a name, but a deadline? What if the quiet decision that actually decides the Lakers season happens off camera, in a room with no microphones where a stopwatch and a spreadsheet matter more than any rumor? And what if that choice made weeks before the trade buzzer ends up shaping where LeBron's final chapters are written, how the rotation breathes, and whether Los Angeles is playing meaningful basketball in May? Think about it. In a league obsessed with splashy moves and midnight bombs, the most powerful moments are often boring on the surface benchmarks, thresholds, lines in the sand. Somewhere between the noise of social media and the echo of practice rims, a front office asks one question: does our current build travel in April? Because if it doesn't, waiting becomes a luxury you cannot afford. That's where this story lives, in the tension between patience and urgency, continuity and a midseason pivot. Legacy and the cold math of winning now. Here's what you're going to get in this video, without any fluff. The real context around LeBron's window and how that changes every decision at El Segundo. The rotation levers that the coaching staff can pull before any trade talk even matters. The specific on-court metrics that will separate "we're fine" from "we have to move." The archetype of player the Lakers will chase if they go to the market. And the ripple effects in the locker room if minutes tighten or roles shift. No fairy tales. No mystery sources doing magic tricks. Just the logic tree the franchise is actually climbing. You're watching Lakers News Fan Report. If you live and breathe purple and gold, lock in with us right now. Tap subscribe, drop a like so more Lakers fans find this breakdown, and keep the alerts on. This is the place where we cut through the noise and talk basketball like it matters. Because it does. All right, let's set the stage. LeBron James is still a top-tier decision engine. Maybe he's changed the way he dominates, more angles than explosion, more control than chaos, but he still tilts the floor. That matters because windows are built around force multipliers, and he remains one. The second pillar is simple. Los Angeles can't waste defensive brilliance on one night and spacing on another. The West doesn't wait. It punishes. If the team is going to contend, the backbone has to be repeatable. How they get threes, how they wall off the paint, how they finish possessions on the glass. Stars win series, but habits win rounds. Last season taught brutal lessons. When the Lakers defended without fouling, ran the shooters on the weak side, and got into their second side actions quickly, they looked like a home court team in the West when the foot came off the gas late closeouts. Stagnant initiations, easy tags on the roller, the margins vanish. That's not about effort. That's about architecture. Good teams don't choose between defense and spacing. They fuse them. The coaching staff knows this. The front office knows this. The players absolutely feel it. This is why the preseason and the first month matter more than talking heads admit. You're not just warming up. You're testing stress points. Who can keep pace in second units without hemorrhaging points at the nail? Who can toggle between ball and body movement when teams switch? Who can punish drop without abandoning the paint? These are not glamorous questions, but they're championship questions. If the answers are honest, the plan gets honest too. Now, rotation levers. There are three that change the temperature of the whole room. First, the early offense throttle. When the Lakers cross half court with 20 on the clock and attack the middle third, they generate cleaner looks for shooters and easier reads for playmakers. Second, the low man discipline. If the weak side defender peels on time, the defense survives middle penetration without collapsing, which keeps corner threes from becoming blood loss. Third, the bench connector. One player who screens, cuts, and makes the extra pass can turn a clunky second unit into a net positive group just by speeding up choices. That's not theory, it's observable basketball physics. There's also the human piece we tend to rush past. Roles are oxygen. Veterans respect young guys who sprint into responsibilities and don't complain. Young guys respect veterans who talk on defense and keep the chain moving on offense. A locker room gets lighter when minutes make sense, and it gets heavy when they don't. In this sport, You can hear the truth in the way the ball snaps around the perimeter. When it pops, you feel the building breathe. When it sticks, you feel everyone tighten. Add in timeline pressure. Every team says the regular season is a lab. For the Lakers, it can't be a lab without a hypothesis. The hypothesis has to be measurable. Can this roster without outside help produce playoff shots on schedule and remove easy shots on the other end? There's a difference between we believe and we can prove. The difference is what drives phones to ring in January.OK-exhale, because here is where the conversation turns. We told you we bring you context first, then the levers, then the thresholds. Now we can talk about the decision that actually moves the season. Up to now, we're on paragraphs 1 through 9. From here on, we go straight at the headline you've been waiting for. The real news is this. Internally, the Lakers have aligned the first 2025 games as a formal checkpoint that will trigger a pivot if two things aren't trending in the right direction: defensive versatility at the wing, can you switch without bleeding at the rim? And three-point volume quality, not makes attempts from the right places. If those bars are not being cleared by that checkpoint, the organization will aggressively pursue a switchable, playoff-proof wing who lives in the 6'6", 6'9" range and can defend across positions while hitting league average plus from deep. Not a splashy name for the sake of headlines. Function that fits the stars and survives in April. That is the plan, not an announcement. Not fireworks, and definitely not a Twitter fantasy. It's a grown-up structure for decision-making. You set a window, you measure, you act. And yes, it's the right way to handle a season that is both about honoring LeBron's excellence and refusing to pretend time isn't undefeated. If the current group hits the benchmarks, continuity wins. If it doesn't, the front office won't wait for the standings to make the choice for them. Let's zoom into the trade market. Logic without turning this into a transaction circus. The archetype they'll chase if triggered is the same every contender wants. Switchable length that doesn't kill spacing. Think of players who can guard 1 to 4, tag the roller, and still be a threat in the corners. That kind of piece reduces the number of defensive concessions you have to make against elite Western wings and removes the pick your poison dilemmas that sunk possessions last year. On offense, you're not asking that player to be a star. You're asking them to be a solvent, something that dissolves the gunk that stops the ball. Asset math matters. The Lakers are balancing flexibility with responsibility to future drafts. That's why a checkpoint exists. You don't spend a future pick to fix a November problem that would have been solved by December continuity. You spend it when the data says your ceiling is capped without that upgrade. That is also why contracts and matching salary frameworks are kept tidy early, so if the pivot is green-lit, the mechanics aren't a scramble. The point here isn't to name names. It's to understand why certain archetypes and cap structures are sitting on the whiteboard already. Now, what's the basketball case for patience before the pivot? First, internal improvement is the cheapest star tax. A role player who sprints through a screen angle properly can be a 2-point swing every quarter. A shooter who ups his attempt rate by 2 clean threes per game changes how defenses tag the roller. A big who communicates early and drop prevents a chain of rotations that ends in a corner fire drill. If that collective uptick shows up, the need shrinks in real time. The staff will look for that before they ever call another GM. Second, health and minute distribution are not just footnotes. If the Lakers can keep their primary engines in that sweet spot high leverage, lower waist, they create 2 simultaneous blessings: fresher legs in March and clearer film on bench combinations. That clarity has trade value on its own. When other teams can see precisely what a player looks like in a defined job, negotiations are cleaner. It's easier to buy or sell when the market has tape that makes sense. Third, the schedule itself offers truth serum. There's a stretch early where the Lakers will face a diet of different defensive coverages, some switch heavy, some conservative drop, some zone sprinkled in as a dare. How Los Angeles generates paint touches and corner threes across those nights will say more than any press conference. If the answers look repeatable, continuity is the right call. If they look matchup fragile, that's your sign. Let's not dodge the elephant. LeBron's decision-making gravity demands urgency, and everyone in the building knows it. No one wants to be the franchise that squints at a title window and decides to check back later. That's why a benchmark-driven plan matters. It protects against both panic and denial. And for the fan base, it's the clearest possible message. There's a standard. There's a timeline, and there's a willingness to act. There's also the room, the vibe, the heartbeat you can't fake. When roles click, you feel guys exhale. A young wing who knows he'll get 6 straight minutes plays freer. A veteran guard who trusts the help behind him takes a more aggressive angle at the point of attack. A big who gets 2 touches early will set harder screens late. These are the tiny truths that add up to playoff reality. This is why the staff will spend as much time in film sessions talking about timing, spacing, and communication as they do about opponent personnel. If this core can talk louder and think faster, they save the front office a phone call. If the pivot is activated, what changes on the floor? The offense becomes less matchup dependent because your new wing flattens out the coverage choices. Teams can't overload help on LeBron without paying in the corners. They can't stash a weaker defender without being hunted in screening actions. On defense, more switch possessions without scrambles keep rebounding assignments clean and foul counts low. Fewer scrambles mean fewer corner threes surrendered, and that has a sneaky, compounding effect across a 7-game series. If the pivot isn't activated, if the benchmarks are met, what then? Then the story is continuity and health. Then the Lakers are a team that wins the same way in December and April. Pace into purpose. Paint to 3 second efforts on the glass. Discipline low man help, and the masterclass reads from the guy who's been doing this for 2 decades. That team can absolutely win 2 rounds and scare anyone. Would a splash upgrade be fun? Sure. Is it necessary if the numbers sing? No. Winning will tell you when to shut up and enjoy the ride. There's a final layer to all this: identity. The great Lakers teams across eras were different in style but identical in clarity. You knew what they wanted to take away and what they wanted to produce. We're not in a triangle era. We're in a versatility era. The modern Lakers identity, when it's humming, is built on pressure without panic. Switch where you can, show and recover where you must, rebound like it's oxygen, and run before defenses set the trap. On offense, early paint touches, wide spacing, and decisions made on the catch. That's the DNA that makes a mid-season pivot either unnecessary or incredibly effective when the right player plugs in dot. So where does that leave us tonight? With a team that understands the stakes, a staff that's aligning process with scoreboard, and a front office that has put a clock on its own patience. No melodrama needed. Just basketball clarity and the courage to follow it. If you came here for certainty, here it is. The season won't hinge on a headline. It'll hinge on the habits that make that headline necessary or not. Now label time, because you deserve it straight. The news, here is a plan. Not a press release. A 20-25 game. Checkpoint tied to defensive versatility on the wing and 3-point volume quality, with an aggressive pursuit of a switchable 2-way forward if those targets aren't met. That's the truth of how contenders operate. And yes, it's the correct way to honor LeBron's present while protecting the franchise's future. My opinion before we close. I support the benchmark. It's respectful to the locker room because it gives players a first shot to solve their own problems. And it's respectful to the fan base because it promises action if the numbers don't add up. And to be absolutely clear for the record, this is analysis and informed speculation about process, not an announcement of a specific trade or a guaranteed move. Your turn, tell me below. Would you pull the trigger at the checkpoint if the wing defense and 3-point profile lag? Or would you ride continuity all the way to the deadline? I'm genuinely curious how Lakers fans would draw that line.